So this is a really extraordinary evening, I think, that we're going to share together. And I really wanted to thank both Michael Kern and Natascha Laing for coming to share just maybe the beauty of the human soul, the human spirit. Michael Kern, I've known him for many years. We're old friends. He's a cranial sacral therapist, an osteopath and a naturopath. He's the founder and course director of the Cranial Sacral Therapy Educational Trust in London. He's an international teacher, and he's author of the book Wisdom in the Body. And that book is available. I think he's bought a few copies if anyone's interested. My daughter Portia has them at the back. And of course, we have the amazing Natascha Laing, who's going to take us on an extraordinary and beautiful journey. So I'm going to light a candle to begin. A candle that, as I light it, you may like to feel the light and the peace that is within you, or you might like to think of someone who you'd like the light to be given to. And then I'm going to hand over to Michael to take us on from there.
So first of all, I want to express my deep thanks and gratitude to Amanda, who's pulled this together and just, really put so much work on behind the scenes to get these kind of gatherings together. Also, really want to thank you for coming. I'm going to just talk for a very short time at the start. I just want to say a little bit around kind of my role in some of this journey that I've been I had the honor to accompany Natascha on over these last few years, and maybe just give you a few perspectives of the kind of work that I do and, some of the things that I've witnessed whilst working with Natascha. And then I'm going to just pass you over to her, and she's going to tell you her story. And one of the things that I want to say at the beginning is, and we spoke about this in the car on the way here, we're not here to say what anybody should or shouldn't be doing for cancer or for any other kind of condition. What we're going to be sharing is a very personal journey, things that maybe, things that Natascha has experienced, that she's connected to, certainly just not with my support, but with the support of many people around her. And I think, I just want to kind of say from the beginning, we all have our own way, we all have our own journey, and, as much as we can just to honor whatever is our own individual journey, whether it's with illness or not, or whatever kind of challenges we may be facing in life. The tools that I use to support people through challenges, and I treat people with a very wide range of different conditions, is mainly a therapy called craniosacral therapy. And I want to just take a couple of minutes at the start to explain a little bit about what that is, because it's possible that quite likely some of you don't really know or are not familiar with this. It's a very gentle hands-on treatment that works with subtle movements within the body, subtle rhythms within the body. And the notion is that there are a number of rhythms that are present, not just our lung breathing, not just our heart beating, but there are a number of other subtler rhythms which involve just the way the cells of the body, the tissues of the body breathe, the subtle movements that take place within us and also around us as well. And in our experience, these subtle movements, these subtle rhythms have a very important consequence for our state of health and well-being. When the subtle rhythms are able to express through our body physiologies without restriction or impediment, this is really a marker of health. There's something that seems to be carried within these subtle movements that you can learn how to feel, how to sense through your hands, how to perceive. When it's all working with fullness, this is really a marker of a state of health and well-being. But if there is some holding or restriction to the way in which these subtle motions happen, then this can be an important factor behind various conditions that we might experience in life. Now, there are a number of rhythms that we work with. I'm not planning to go into this in great detail, but there's also the notion that underneath all of these movements and all of these functions that play through us, there is a basic ground of stillness. We could just call it a basic ground of being, from which and out of which we express ourselves in life. And we say life is expressed as motion. But behind those motions, there is also something which is prior to those movements, which we might be able to describe as something which is at the very source of ourselves, at the very core of ourselves. So in this treatment, we're working with the movements of life as they're expressed through us, but we're also exploring what lies behind those movements, what might be at the very core of ourselves. Now, I've known Natascha for maybe 10 years now, something like that, maybe a little bit less. She did a training course that I led in London a number of years ago. And then I didn't hear from her for some time. It must have been a couple of years or something, I don't know. But I kind of heard from someone or somewhere, she wasn't doing very well, but I didn't really know what was going on. And it was in December 2014, I got a telephone call, and it was Natascha, and she said, "Could you come over? I'm not doing great. I'd love to see you." Okay, so I really didn't know what was going on. And she lives not too far from where I'm based in North London. And so I was able to go over, I think just a couple of days later. And I walked into her room, and she was lying in bed. And as I started to hear the story, I have to say the first thing was somewhat of a look of shock on my face, because she was really doing very poorly. I mean, very pallid and lost a huge amount of weight, and basically hadn't been able to get out of bed for about 3 months. And just, I think the week before, somebody had just very lightly leaned on her arm, and the upper arm broke because it had just been eaten away so much with the cancer, the tumours that were there. And I won't go into too many gory details here, but the breast was just an open sore, and she was she was having great difficulty breathing. There were, by the looks of it, at least 3 fractures in her spine, just from the cancer that had eaten away into her backbone, into her vertebra. So she'd been in bed and really not able to move, and said, "Can you come over and give me a treatment?" Okay. So, so anyway, we caught up a little bit, and I did some hands-on work with her, which was not anything particularly remarkable or descriptive. It was just craniosacral therapy uses very gentle hands-on contacts. And sometimes those contacts, not just sometimes, very often those contacts can be very settling for somebody. And I did some of this, and it was very nice. And we kind of said, well, look, let's maybe look and do this again. But at that point, Natascha, certainly up to that point, had decided that she did not want to go into the medical system, which I don't know, can't say it was a good decision, a bad decision. It was certainly a very stubborn decision, because in the process, things had really got bad. But whatever it was, I think it was the next day or the day after, she telephoned her general practitioner, and it was just really clear that things had got to a point that, there was, it had gone so far. There was, hospital care was the only answer, and she called the doctor and was basically immediately admitted into University College Hospital London. She asked if I would be able to come along and continue the hands-on treatment, which I was really happy to do. And so I also enlisted the help of a dear friend and colleague of ours. Because I'm teaching some weeks, so I'm not able to wasn't able to get to see her every week. So some weeks she was perhaps seeing two of us, and some weeks there was just one visit. But when she was admitted, of course, basically they found cancer had just gotten everywhere. I mean, it was, not only right through all her bones, in the long bones, in the vertebra, it was in the lungs, and she was having just increasing difficulty breathing. We later discovered also, not immediately I think, but it was then discovered to have gone to the liver, and also numerous tumors in her brain as well. So, we really kind of thought this is, palliative care, and there wasn't that much that the medical doctors could do at that stage. I mean, she was beyond surgery, she was beyond chemotherapy. They did give her some shots of radiotherapy in some of the long bones just to help, kind of reduce some of the development of the cancer. And she was also given some hormone treatment and basically a lot of painkillers, a lot of morphine, because it was a very, as you can appreciate, a lot of pain was going on around in her body. But she was also finding it increasingly difficult to breathe. And so very soon also after going into hospital, some stents were fitted into the lungs to drain the lungs. And there was so much inflammation going on in her lungs. For a period of time, she was draining off probably about a litre of fluid a day. And this was just needed just in order to keep her breathing so she could carry on breathing. So we started this hands-on treatment. It was really just to make life as comfortable as possible for her. And I think it was about, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks into visiting her. I remember there was a particular time when I went up, and I remember your room was up on the 10th floor at University College, and we had you had a window bed, so we had this wonderful view over London, and I was sitting there, and I can't remember, I was holding her back or holding her head, and just starting to tune into the presence of some of these subtle movements and, encouraging the motion. And she started, I just remember in these sessions, she started to really drop into a very, very deep, quiet place within herself. And there was a tremendous sense of peace that actually came into the room. I felt it, I think she felt it. I don't know whether other people in the ward felt it. This was an open ward, we just kind of put the curtains behind whilst we were giving the treatment, and there was all kinds of other things going on. But as we were sitting, she was lying, and I was sitting up on the 10th floor, kind of with this view over London, there was a deep sense of peace that just seemed to kind of be much bigger than us, that as it were, just seemed to encompass the whole sense of around us. Almost, here we are in the middle of this chaotic city. I don't know if you know University College Hospital, right in the middle of the Euston Road, one of the busiest interchanges in the centre of London. And there we were, and it was just this deep sense of peace that seemed to encompass us. And I looked at her afterwards, and she looked at me, and we kind of went, wow, that was nice. That was great, And then this happened, the similar sort of thing happened, for about 2 or 3 sessions afterwards. Now, in the midst of this, there's another piece to the story that I would like to share with you, and I have to watch my time here. But it is a significant piece of the story. I was helping to organize a visit to London for a Tibetan Buddhist teacher. And this was in January 2015. And I said to Natascha, shall I ask him if he might be willing to come and visit you? And she said, yes, please. So I made that request, and straight away he agreed, and he was in town for 5 days with the most ridiculous schedule, but we managed to find a time. I think it was 9 o'clock on a Monday morning or something like this, and I met him at the hospital, and he came with an entourage of 6 lamas and started to ask me a little bit about what the situation was, and I explained to him. So he came in, and I was standing at the end of the bed with Natascha's mother, witnessing this interaction between this teacher and Natascha. And it was very, very beautiful. He was taking her hand and just speaking to her softly. I didn't hear what was being said, but there was such a sense of communication that was taking place between the two of them. And then afterwards he said, well, I think we should do a little puja, a little ceremony. And so for the next half an hour, we had this High Lama and 6 other lamas standing around her bed, basically doing invocations and giving her a blessing and and an empowerment to do a particular meditation practice. And I was standing at the end of the bed, just as you can imagine in this open ward, these 6, 7 monks chanting for about half an hour. I don't know what the other patients in the ward must have thought. We were just behind the curtains, but I was standing at the end of the bed, just tears coming down my face. It was so touching. But I have to say, this was almost felt like last rites. It kind of felt, this is what was happening. Nobody really thought we would be sitting here tonight, whatever it is, 2, 3 years later. We thought it was going to go a different direction. But anyway, this was a tremendous, I think, support for Natascha, just to feel this connection and presence, and that, this kind of love was something which could be so tangible and experiential, that was brought through these beautiful beings who came into the hospital. As I was going down in the lift on the way down, I turned around to the Lama and I said to him, thank you so much for coming. And he looked at me and he said, no, thank you for letting me do my job. It was like, that was real. This is what I'm here for. And anyway, so we carried on and doing treatments every week, for me, every couple of weeks sometimes. And there was little signs that, little sparkles starting to come back. There was one day I came and visited her, and she was slightly propped up with her, sort of waiting for me to arrive. She'd just been laying almost flat, unable to move for so many months. And each time it felt like we were able to touch quite a deep place of healing. And through these sessions, she was able to really connect to something very sweet within herself, but very, it felt very kind of nurturing. It felt that through the sessions, there was a real sense of reconnecting to something fundamentally good, fundamentally healthy. And she presented quite a conundrum, because after about, must have been, I think, maybe 2 or 3 months after being admitted to the hospital, they didn't really know what else to do with her. Anyway, she was then transferred to a hospice, and a beautiful place with fantastic care, but not really a place that you would expect to walk out from. So anyway, the weeks passed. The inflammation, she was still getting drained, still having all this fluid coming off her lungs, but that started to slowly subside. And so instead of the lungs being drained every day, it then went to every 2 days, and then 3 times a week, and then, things started to get a little bit easier, and it's as if she started to, there was a little bit more life being expressed through her. This is something that I'm trained to feel. I could feel this, when I was having my hands on her. I could start to feel, wow, there's something coming back here. There's a bit more vitality. There's a bit more, energy moving through her. A bit more movement starting to express through her body. After about 2 or 3 months, I remember she was sitting up in bed and eyes wide open, and started to come back, still heavily on painkillers, but it was as if something else was starting to happen here. We still couldn't really imagine or dream that this was, where else could this go? But after about 6 months in the hospice, they didn't really know what to do with her. She hadn't done the expected thing. So by that time, the lungs there was no doubt still tumours there, but the drainage had been almost stopped, I think, by that stage. So she was discharged to go back home. I'm going to pass over to Natascha in just a moment and let her pick up on the story. But we continued to work with her at home. She was getting support, I think, from many different directions. So this was not the only thing that I think supported her during this time. But each time I saw her, there was more improvement. She started at one point to get numb sensations around her face caused by the brain tumors pressing on cranial nerves. 2 or 3 weeks of, I don't know what else was going on, maybe she can tell you, but 2 or 3 weeks of hands-on treatment, those symptoms reduced, and then they didn't come back. And slowly, step by step, things have improved and are continuing to improve. And I think must have been about 6 months ago, I said to Natascha, look, it's really difficult for me to come to your house, you know, because I've kind of got so many other things going on. Come to me. If you come to me, I'll be able to see you more regularly. I'll be able to kind of keep this. So she said, yeah, fine, no problem. She lives about a 20-minute, half an hour walk from me. She walked down the road to get to me. Then had to take a minicab back, but anyway, but the improvement continued, and this has been, you know, I've treated a lot of people. I've been in practice for 35 years and seen a lot of different kinds of conditions, and I haven't witnessed this kind of situation before where somebody has just come back right from the brink. I mean, this is right on the edge of life. It's been an absolute honor for me to have been working with Natascha through this time. She's just such an amazing human being, such an amazing lady with, you're going to hear from her in a minute, with such a beautiful heart. And maybe I'll take a little bit more time later on, or through question and answers, we can share a little bit more of the story. But I think at this point, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to pass you over to Natascha, who's just going to share a little bit of her experience. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to stay sitting because I just need to, but to all of you at the back, hi. And, well, I've never done anything like this before, so I'll just dive in and we'll see how we go, yeah? I think I need to go back a bit and then work my way back to here, just so you get a bit of what's been going on. The year before I was diagnosed with cancer, my brother Adam passed away. And that created a lot of conundrums and just very difficult feelings about what was the purpose, what was the sense, what was love, lots of conundrums about life and what was the purpose of all of this if it just ends in this kind of, everything felt ruined, you know, it was just a ruin. And even my memories, which are and always had been really amazing childhood, but somehow after his death, everything was just shit, you know, it all led to this destruction of his life. So my whole perception was changed, which was, and with him dying, I felt it wasn't just him that had died, but a big part of me had gone with him. So I'd lost a big part of myself. So the year later, in 2009, this is, so it's quite some years now, when I found I had a lump in my breast and finally was pushed into going to the doctor, because it's not the sort of thing I'd like to do. I found I had cancer. It wasn't the biggest surprise in the world because I knew something was up anyway. But the funny thing was that actually having the cancer seemed to ignite a bit of interest in life again, which I had lost, my sort of interest, if you like, in life. And then having the cancer, it was like something, oh, right, this is quite interesting. What's actually happening? What's happening to me now? And so, yeah, it sparked off another, something grabbed my attention. And I was engaging again with life. I'd gone to the hospital, I'd been told by the doctors what they thought I should do, that I had metastasized cancer in the breast, in the lymph. that I should have full mastectomy, chemo, radio, hormone therapy. And as some of you might know, they go very fast. It's like they want to do all this to you next week, you know. And that just seemed like, whoa, hang on a minute, you know, I'm not sure I want to do, you know, I just need to, I don't want to make choices out of fear. And it felt like everything was driving in this kind of fear that, oh, panic now, suddenly, next week, you've got to. And it didn't take long for me to decide that I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do it. It felt like to sort of destroy myself to get well. It didn't make any sense, and I started to get into this sort of idea of the attitude is to kill for peace. And it became more than just my body. It became humanity's way of dealing with world situations. We think we can just kill for peace. You know, there's something going on there, let's wipe it out and see what's left. And I felt very protective of myself, and that actually I love myself. I didn't want to hurt or harm myself to get well. I wanted to nurture, nourish myself, and, you know, go into this process, not try to run from it, but what is this that's actually happening to me? So, yeah, I didn't want to kill for peace. And it wasn't that I was also very protective of myself in the sense of what people would project onto me. I kept my sort of social and quite small, because I wanted people just to see me as I am, not to see cancer and then whatever they think that means, which is often full of fear and different opinions of what you should do. And because I wasn't taking the conventional treatment, people had very strong opinions. And because I have a son as well, a lot of people thought I was being quite reckless. But really, for me, I thought this was my best chance. I was doing what I really believed was the best thing to do. And so I found my way with different ways, you know, and it wasn't that I wasn't up for treatment. I was up for so many treatments, just not that one. You know, I mean, I've actually done an awful lot of stuff, but stuff that would support and what I felt was good. So I started off with different diet, and you know, the whole sort of juicing and supplements and all the things that you get led into. Then I met a lovely guy from Brazil who worked with a shamanic medicine, a frog medicine called Cambo, which comes from the Amazon, and it's a medicine for the heart. And it clears what they call panema, darkness, and opens the light of the heart. And I enjoyed this a lot. It's a really powerful medicine. It's actually a poison. But these shamanic medicines work in so many levels of the unseen. So I worked quite a lot of that with that. I was also very into Vipassana meditation that I did a lot of. Also, as Michael said, I'd done Michael's course before all this happened, and one of the things that really stuck with me was this, that whatever's going on, you always look for the health. So it's not so much about whatever you think the issue is, you find the health. And this sort of, well, what's health? You know, what is the health? And gradually throughout these years, you know, it's brought me deeper into the core of what I feel I am, or what I think we all are, which is untouchable and is always there and is never ill. There is no sickness in the core of our being, you know, so gradually I came to really understand that. But the shamanic thing for a long time was a big part of what I was working with, and where I really found a lot of joy and celebration to be alive. And that was really the feeling that I was going with, was actually, you know, this kind of celebration of life, not this doom and gloom or cancer, whatever. Actually, it was leading me into things I was really enjoying, and I was finding that I was almost in a heightened state a lot of the time because of this appreciation just to be alive. So I was actually having quite a good time. The frog medicine comes from the Amazon, these tree frogs, and the way that they found that was through the shamans taking ayahuasca, which is another plant medicine, visionary medicine. And I went with my mum to Peru to do some work with these Shipipo shamans in the Amazon, to work with the ayahuasca. I sort of had a feeling that maybe I'd get some really important instruction, or that I could kind of dissolve myself and recombobulate myself without the cancer. You know, I just wanted to go out to the Amazon, really. And it was wonderful to go with my mum. You know, she's 76, and she's been out there a couple of times before. So we went to this place where that was set up for people to come to do these series of ceremonies with the Shipipo, and take the ayahuasca every evening in the night time in the Amazon. And the jungle at night, it's like every sound you've ever experienced is there in some blip or guido. It's just incredible, more kind of sound at night than in the day even. And they do these ceremonies at night so that they can see the light of you. And you drink the ayahuasca, and actually what I found was that the healing, what I experienced, is they come and they sit in front of you and they sing into you. And the way they work with their plants is that they go and they diet different plants. They spend maybe 3 months just taking this one plant until they become the vibration of that plant. And then with that comes a song. So when they want to give you medicine, they give you a song, and they sit and they sing into you. And it was the most beautiful experience, you know, really, really profound, to be sort of sung back into health. And these amazing people that are just giggling all the time, singing to us all, you know. It's the guy who set it up, he called it the A&E, the jungle A&E. So I was getting really moved and getting a lot of, just profoundly touched by also, you know, this goodness of humanity and this very simple way of helping health to share, to give it, to share it, for it to circulate. I also went to, these are just some of them, just trying to share some of the things I tried along the way while I was still moving about. And I went up to see this guy called Yeshe Dondon in the Himalayas, who used to be one of the Dalai Lama's physicians. He's now in his 80s, and he has a little clinic in McLeod Ganj, and works with Tibetan medicine. He sees about 60 people a day. And he takes a little sample of your urine and whisks it up and then decides what little herbs you need. But he also works completely he doesn't charge. There's no fee to see him. And was deeply moved by him as well, these people that are giving their life in this service to do what they can. And it didn't seem so much about taking the medicine that he gave, but just about him and his dedication to support all these people. But the years are going by, I'm missing out huge chunks because, you know, this is a sort of 7 years has passed, yeah? But it got to the point that the cancers, and I don't know whether it was just happening anyway, or maybe I'd stopped using the Cambo so much, and I tried hemp oil. And during that time, the cancer seemed to spread really throughout my body until I'm coming up to the point of being where Michael sort of came in, where I was firstly couldn't really get out of my flat because my bones were literally breaking, and then till I couldn't get out of bed. And I had people come, you know, I had most amazing people around me coming to support me, coming to stay in the flat and help cope with this really quite dramatic situation. But somehow it still felt like quite a celebration of life, even though it was, you know, it was quite a serious situation I was in. You know, the people that came around, I didn't want anybody grieving around me. As long as I was alive and wanted to share a nice day or a nice moment, or, you know. So I wasn't having people crying around me, mourning me before I'm gone, you know. And but it got to the point where it was just, I had Peter Walker, Jeb, and I'd also met a lot of people that were praying for me. I'd been in a lot of praying circles and made connections with some amazing people. John Tyndall had been treating me with acupuncture, and there's a lovely group of people around him that were praying for me continuously. And I felt a lot of strength from that. But yeah, it got to the point where basically I called 999 because it just got too much, and the ambulance came, and then there starts the process of going into UCH, which I felt that to go into hospital would be the end of me. But I found going into hospital was also these incredible people with this incredible support. These nurses they are just the most amazing people I've ever come across, the work they're doing. And again, I was really deeply moved by feeling that actually everything in life is working for life, to live, is trying to give life. And even in hospital it's meant to be that, but I always thought it would be the opposite of that. But I was deeply moved by the nurses and the doctors. They were all very respectful of this probably slightly unusual situation of somebody coming in this state, having done the chosen the route I'd chosen. And I was moved to Mary Curie. And it really feels, the nurses felt like they're sort of angels at the gateway. You know, I really felt I was surrounded literally by angels. And was fascinated by them. Who are these people that can do this work? Because I don't know if any of you have been into a hospice or see what it's like. It's quite a place. It's quite a place. And so, the bell ring. So what I found in that time of also with the Vipassana as well, there's an expression, let the Dharma do, you know, let nature do. And I kept thinking, you know, I have to just go with this, because in this is what's happening. And if I'm to try and stop it, maybe I'm trying to stop something that really needs to happen, and I might have to go at some other point in some other life and go through this in another way, you know. So I wanted to really just honour my experience, not to run from it. And from all the lead up before I went into hospital, you know, already my bones were very broken, my lungs were full and stuff. And I dealt with the pain of that by just not thinking of it as pain, also in Vipassana, it's just a vibration, So I would go into it in that way and just let it be what it is. And I realised that when you try and get away from something, that's when you're really fucked. If you're in a difficult situation, you try and get away from it, you're in trouble. So the way to be with it was just to be with it. And then it actually transforms into something else. And I realised that something very beautiful was happening, although it looked awful. Actually, within it, it wasn't. It was quite amazing what was happening. And I was going deeper and deeper into, what maybe is the essence of what I feel is my being. And in that space, it's untouchable. There's no disease, there's no life and death. There's just this state of being, which at times in the hospital, full of tubes and lung drains and stuff, I felt pure joy. And I thought, this is actually it, because, when you have a reason for joy, it's not really it, because it's because of that reason of sort of self-gratifying yourself with something. When there's no reason for it, and you feel it, it's the most amazing thing. And so I was getting to that point of really just feeling that. And a constant having to let go. You have to let go of everything that your life has been. And, because there's no future, because you can't really go past the next breath. The moment gets right into the present, because, even tomorrow is a bit, thinks like, well, that's quite far away tomorrow. There's now, and, you can't really. So I got really used to just being in the present moment. And the closer and the more you get into the present moment, there's no fear. Because fear is always when you're somewhere else from, that you become, when you're actually in the moment, because you're in it, you know exactly what's happening there, because that's where you are. So there's nothing to be scared of, so the fear sort of dissolves. And, I put into practice all the things that I grew up with yoga, always interested in meditation. And so I was able to sort of practice all these things by, my body dissolving inside me and my lungs unable to breathe. I would practice just allowing myself to breathe through my skin or through the soles of my feet. And think, well, where do I embody? And Peter would always say, stay low, babe, stay low, like the soul or the spirit is below the belly button, and, stay there. So I'd imagine myself there and just allowing my body to breathe through my skin and my feet, because the lungs really didn't work, and there was no breath there. And I'd prop my bed right up, and sometimes, well, a lot of the time, just stay awake also, because dying, it feels a bit like going to sleep. It's like going to sleep, but it's different. You can feel it's not sleep, it's actually you're dying, and the breath is just going away. And it's not going to come back, it's just going like that, and that feels like sleep, but it's death. But death is not death, it's just, transition. But I would keep myself awake so that I could keep the breath moving through me, so that last one didn't just go away, but I could sort of consciously stay conscious. I thought, if I'm still here, how can I die? Because I'm still here. I'm still here, so I can't, because I'm here, So I'd stay with that. And gradually, as the body got a bit stronger, and, you know, when they sent me home, I certainly didn't walk out of Mary Curie. I was carried out of that bed and taken to my bed at home. I was still very much bedbound. And I still had drains in my lungs. The nurses came and drained my lungs at home. But I was home, you know, and that was a big thing, to be back home. And also a beautiful, you know, the caretaker had collected flowers from the communal garden, and all the neighbours had... I've just been given so much by so many people, so much care, so much support, so much kind of nurture and nourish from everyone around me. You know, my friends, my family, my new friend, that people I never met before. That I just kept thinking, what can I do to say thank you for all of this? You know, and my first thought would be, well, stay alive. You know, say thank you with your life. Say thank you by being alive. You know, that's the first thing. It's just to try and stay alive, to just say thank you. But just to go back a bit to maybe some other things, is just this thing about health, you know, that I really got into, what is health? And I realised that health, you know, this quest for health, you know, we're very kind of picky about the experiences we think we should have, and what's a good one and what's a bad one, and what's, you know, even what's health or what's sickness. You know, and I feel like this journey hasn't been one of being unwell. It's been a journey of actually getting well, in the sense of getting to the core of my being. If health means wholeness, to be whole, which is what we always are, and it has nothing to do with actually living or dying. That's not even got anything to do with it. It's to do with getting to the core of your being. And, well, that's what I felt, you know, and so it didn't really... It wasn't even a quest, you know, whether, you know, it wasn't getting well, wasn't to stay alive. It was just to really understand that place in myself, and to know it's okay to be there, and to let what's happening happen, and not to try and, you know, although I've done lots of things, and I continue to do what I can to support myself and to celebrate being alive. And as I've found that I've got stronger, and, you know, this being in the moment is a lovely place to be, you know, once you start thinking of a future. And at first, once I would think, oh, you know, well, I'm here, you know, maybe I'll be here. You know, I wouldn't go as far as a year. I still find it hard to think of a future. It almost feels like, whoa, that's, you know, am I allowed to project that far? But as you think of a future, fear comes with it. So, you know, it's a kind of mixed thing of when you're in that state of so-called dying, or when you're in the very immediate present. It's actually quite a beautiful place to be once you let go of everything, or come into the moment with it. Well, shall I just pass it over to you guys, and you can, you know, maybe if you ask some things, and then I'll think of something to answer with, or, you know. Does that sound good? Yeah, go on.
I've got a mic here.
Is that all right?
Hi, I'm Samia.
Hi.
I had the pleasure of Michael actually training me.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Michael. Hi. Natascha, thank you so much for your sharing. It has really touched me. Is it true to say that you were aware of wellness throughout the journey?
Well, I think that's what I was trying to say, is that, you know, if you really go into it, what is it to be well? Is it a state of your body? Or what are we, in essence? And so as I got more and more deeper and deeper, I found that essence of my being, which I think is actually pure joy, is untouchable from any of it. So, yeah, And I think I think maybe, you know, to go through something like, you know, like they say, there's no being sick, there's only getting well. Being sick is getting well. So maybe through those experiences I was able to go deeper to understand that. So it was through that I can get well or understand my inner being. Is that right to say? Yeah. Answer.
I know when we spoke earlier yesterday, you mentioned something about a moment in St. Paul's Cathedral, which sounded rather beautiful.
Yeah. Well, this was going back again. Before I was went to hospital, I went to St. Paul's Cathedral with a friend for evensong, and it was really beautiful. You know, there's a sermon, and then the young boys, the choir, they sing, and I was really transported into another place with myself, and I cried deeply, and I kind of lost the sense of everything around me. I was very into it. Perhaps I say I had an epiphany. You know, I really felt I saw Christ, if you like, and was one of the river of humanity going past his feet, and just being kind of given that acceptance and blessing. And when I sort of opened my eyes again, from whatever I was going through or feeling or seeing, the whole place was empty. Everybody had left, except for the vicar, just standing there, patiently waiting for me to kind of finish whatever I was going through. So yeah, that was very powerful, because I realised there's sources of resource or love or whatever it is that generates our life everywhere. It's everywhere. You know, Michael is connected to a great resource and has been a great resource and continues to be. All the people that have prayed for me, all the nurses at Mary Curie. It's everywhere. It's everywhere in everything, and I think that was what I was really feeling, was just, wow, you know, it's there. It's there to be connected with, and it's love, and it's joy, and it's that celebration of, it doesn't matter what experience you're having, any experience is a celebration. And even pain isn't pain. When you really go into it, it can become something quite fascinating as well, you know. So I thought it was quite, you know, I'd been a bit nervous to do this talk. I've never done anything like this before. I didn't really know what. And then when Amanda said, oh, it's been moved to a church, I thought, right, this is great, because it's like just that acknowledgement that life is happening, it's bigger than us. It's not, you know, I'm not coming to do a talk, I'm just going to be part of this happening. We've all been drawn here. What an amazing thing that we all sit here together in this building on this evening after this great big moon. You know, how we all get here, what that's all about. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? Just that we're all here together is incredible, isn't it? You know, so, yeah.
Any questions?
Thank you. Hello, Natascha.
Hi.
I wonder, where did you find who showed you, or where did you know to look for was it called Cambo?
Oh, well, I just bumped into this beautiful guy in the waiting room of the acupuncturist, and just like, well, what's going on with you? Because he's just like radiating light. He's just like beaming like a luminous frog. this thing, and it was like, well, you know, what's going on here? So he's, he's doing this thing, and I said, well, I'd love to join in with that. But it's all around. There's a lot of people now working with it, and it's there. It finds you. I didn't really go looking for it. It was just like bang, there it was. So, yeah, but it's around.
What did you experience when the Tibetan Lamas around you?
That was so beautiful. That was just such a great feeling. I felt again like I just connected to this huge world of whatever they are connected to, this deep, deep, deep world of their meditation, the Buddha, the compassion and acceptance, I think, and this guy, Kumtrul. Just such a beautiful man, you can just feel it so strongly, his whole life dedicated to staying in that field of compassion and love and acceptance, and I don't know, the wisdom and the depth of whatever he holds, and they all held, was really, really, I felt so moved, so deeply blessed. And well, after I'd left UCH, and I came back for an appointment some months later, I was in the lift, and one of the porters, or the people who moved the beds, who used to bring me up and down in the bed he said, I remember you were the one, all the monks came, yeah? And I think the whole hospital had been, probably the whole of London felt it, it was massive. It was a massive, massive, really, really profound feeling to connect with that and be touched by that so personally, I felt really, really blessed, yeah.
Would you say there was a few things that have helped you to recover, or was there one thing that really?
Oh, everything. I mean, people say, what is it? And I say, well, is it the tamoxifen? Is it the Tibetan monks? Is it Hong Kong Fooey? I don't know. It's like, it's everything. The doctors would think, well, it's the estrogen block that they've given me. Is it the cranial work? Is it the connecting? Is it all the prayers, all the songs, all the love? It's everything. I don't know. It's life. It's life, isn't it? It's life, wanting to live and just finding a way. Yeah. It's the great mystery.
Was there a moment when you knew that you were coming back? Did you sort of feel a change?
Well, I never felt like I left, actually. I know my body wasn't looking too great, but in myself, I was there. Yeah. It's slowly, I don't think I had a sort of bang moment like that, where it was like, oh, and now I'm, and it's still a work in progress. I'm still very much trying to gather myself. One of the things, that's what I forgot to say, one of the things when I went to the Amazon and I asked the shamans there, as you get time to talk to them before they start to work on you, I said, well, is there some darkness, or is there some, something, why? And they said, no, it's the grief of your brother's death has pushed your spirit out. And the shamanic work is really about retrieving your spirit, being able to bring yourself back in. And I think one of the things that didn't work for me with the hemp oil was not so much the hemp oil, but that I was in so many different dimensions continuously, my sort of reality was so, it's like you're tripping all the time, yeah? And I felt I really had to be here in this very fixed place of just, you know, let's just have a cup of tea and some toast, something really simple and what everybody does. And for my spirit or my being to be really present here, not to be dispersed in other dimensions and whatever else I was experiencing. So I used to write my name around my belly button. I'd put, you know, write my name and address, put it under my pillow, like, here I am. You know, come back here. Let's just not go too cosmic. So really trying to just call myself back in, and like Peter Walker was always saying, stay low, you know, to come back here, come back into this place in my body.
I just want to congratulate you on your recovery. It's an amazing story, and you're a really good speaker as well.
Thank you.
Have you had any contact with your doctors, and what have they said about your recovery?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, they all think it's great, you know, and at Mary Curie, which I'm still very in contact with because I go back there every 6 weeks, I get given some bisphosphonates, which is something to help strengthen the bones. And I'm still on hormone treatment. So I go to Mary Curie, and some of the nurses have said it's changed the way they treat their patients, because they can't just think that everybody's going to die. They have to keep the possibility that anything's possible. So now, just of them to have seen, they've never seen it happen before. So now they've seen it, they know that it's possible. And, you know, because that thing where you get told, I mean, how many times I've been told, you know, I was told in the beginning I would have 6 months if I didn't do all the treatment I was being offered. And when I was in Mary Curie, and I'd make a comment like, oh, you know, when I get up, and the doctor would look at me like I was completely insane and just shake the head and say, I'm sorry, that's never going to happen. You know, but luckily for me, I don't really take, you know, if somebody tells me that's never going to happen, fuck, I'm going to make that happen. You know, I'd love to do the opposite of what I'm told. So it kind of helped in a way. But I think for a lot of people, you would just believe the doctor and die on cue. You know, I was always fascinated, like, how do people have cancer and they seemingly, and they go and the doctor says, oh, you'll be dead in 6 months. In 6 months, they're dead. How does that happen? And suddenly I was in that process and I realized it's good. Well, they believe what they're told. And then they do it, you know, very obediently. But, you know, I don't think it does, you know, I think for most people it doesn't help to be told you're going to die. Even if they think that. They don't know. You don't know. You don't know. Life is this great mystery. It's always inventing itself, so, you know, anything's possible.
Do you think that your upbringing had anything to do with recovery?
Say that? Oh.
Do you think that your upbringing with your father and that kind of background had an effect on you?
Definitely. Of course, yeah. Of course, and I feel my father has been very present all the time, you know, and he really allowed me to trust myself, you know, and when it came to that thing of, oh, this is about whether you're going to live or not, I thought, well, who do I trust with my life? Who knows best about me? Well, it's got to be me. Not some doctor I've never met before. It doesn't, you know, so I've got to, you know, to take responsibility also and make the decisions that I felt were really true to me. And I was brought up like that. You know, I was brought up being allowed to be, who are not being told what to be. So yeah, definitely I have a lot to thank my father for. Well, and my mother and everybody. Huh? Definitely my mother. She's still here looking after, you know, she's still amazing. definitely, of course, my mother. Yeah.
Quite the same tone, perhaps, but were you never angry?
No.
Okay.
No. What, angry at sort of...
Angry at what you were told or what was happening to you?
Well, sometimes I felt like I didn't think it was a good idea to be told you're going to die. I didn't think that was very helpful, you know, but on the same hand, I feel like actually I found a lot of support in the hospital and with Mary Curie and the doctors. I've grown to have a lot of respect for them, and I think they are amazing what they are doing. And, you know, Mary Curie really gave me the chance to have the time that it took, you know, for this turnaround to happen. So I have a lot of respect for and a lot of gratitude for the chance I've been given to stay alive from everybody that's been part of that, which is very much the doctors and the nurses. You know, I think they are incredible, yeah. So no, not angry, grateful. I'm deeply grateful, deeply grateful.
Natascha, was there any point where you had the thought, I can't afford to die now, I've still got too much to do?
Yeah, well, and also, you know, my main anchor is my son. You know, if I didn't have a son, I'm sure I would have just let myself go and see what comes next and probably be happy to move on to the next adventure into the cosmic soup, you know. But Oscar, my son, I just could not, did not, and will not leave, you know. And I've thought often, well, I have to stay alive until he's grown up, you know. And he's 17 now, yeah, and I think, well, but when do you grow up? At 40, at 50? You know, maybe 50. Yeah, so I think I've got to stay here a little ways if I can. I would like to, for sure, I'd like to, yeah.
Hi, Natascha. I don't know if this question will make sense, but I wonder if you relate in some way to the cancer as a kind of energy that can't hold resonance to you as you are now. If it's no longer possible for you to hold that in your field, does that make sense as a question?
Yeah. I didn't really think of the cancer as something separate from me. And I wondered a lot, what is it? You know, I really wanted to figure out what is this? And I thought we're probably something that just haven't thought of at all. And I thought maybe it's something to do with an accumulation of, you know, I think the way we pass over into the next life, you know, we're not very good at clearing the ground before we pass, and there might be accumulation of possibly too many, not good or bad karma, but just karma or life stories that are carried into life after life after life. And maybe that is, it's cells that don't die off. There's just too much in a way. And so in a way, to be in the moment helps to clear that, you know. But I don't really know what it is. The further, the deeper I go into it, the less I know, actually, to be honest. Don't really know. But yeah, so.
Oh yes, I was going to ask about your son, you know, and the age, but I want to know how did he cope? How has he coped with the whole situation, and who's sort of been looking after him or bringing him up when you weren't able to in some ways?
Yeah.
Sounds. Yeah.
Well, his father. My mother, my brothers, you know, he's held, and really to answer how it's affected him, you'd have to ask him, But I hope that this is part of the lovely tapestry of his life, that he's a sensitive, beautiful guy with depth and understanding, and that this doesn't take away from him but adds to his character and to his development as a man in a positive way. You know, I don't think it has to be a negative to go through extreme situations. You know, there's the most important thing is the love and the being able to be in it, be with it. He's a strong boy. He's a good lad. I look forward to watching him grow. Yeah.
What would you say are the gifts from this experience? How has it changed your everyday? Made tea and toast more tasty?
Well, it does. It does, because I've kind of been, often I feel like I'm kind of set in this kind of state of euphoria to be alive, because, you know, it's this kind of heightened state of just like, wow, you know, life, wow, really amazing thing to be alive, and what a gift and what a miracle, and how amazing even every simple little thing is, you know. And to wake up in the morning and see my son and just say, I love you so much, Oscar, you know. And my favourite thing is not when he says, I love you too, but when he says, I know. Oh, man, that's just like the best. So, you know, I'm loving it. It's really a great thing to be alive, and every day is a super gift that, yeah, I really celebrate. I celebrate, really, to be alive, yeah, every day.
Oh, I can see you now. Hello, Natascha. I was sitting here thinking how wonderful your speech was, your talk this evening, how inspirational you've been, and how you could be so inspirational to other groups. Sorry. I lost my husband from cancer, and I was just thinking, he believed that when he died, he went into the ground, and that was it, and that when Jesus came back for the second coming, he would then be taken to the kingdom of God and be resurrected, which is completely opposite to what I think. And I just wondered how much your sort of belief system helped you to see beyond death rather than just accept that you were going to go or not going to go, and how much, you know, what you believed in drove you forward, whereas he tended to think that that was it. I think that must make a huge difference.
Well, I've never been able to perceive an end, but then at some point I also felt like I'm not sure which way of perceiving, whether there's a better way to perceive that it never ends, because that's also quite maddening. At one point I thought, oh my God, life or death, it's never gonna, you can't get away. It's constant. Consciousness is infinite, endless, you know, and that was quite maddening as well, to kind of think that. It was like, God, you know, this is never going to stop. You know, what's better to actually perceive, right, oh, Christ, okay, we'll end there. That could be quite comforting as well. So I don't know if one is better than the other. It's just how you feel about it, maybe. Maybe that was comfortable feeling for him, is what I mean. It might not have been, you know, maybe for you, you perceive that as maybe not so, but, you know, either way, it's the same thing, maybe.
Natascha, I've had the experience this evening that you've been talking very much from the sense of a blessing of being ill. and how helpful that is for an awful lot of people. And in my gratitude to you for speaking so clearly, I have a certain sense of cynicism in myself, that would you advise people to, apart from really believing in their inner core, really question every single doctor they come across?
Well, I found it's good to make decisions from, you know, for me, I wanted to make my decisions from a place in me that I was comfortable with. I didn't want to be pushed into decisions because of what everybody else thought, and I didn't want to make decisions out of fear. You know, I really didn't want to be kind of, oh, you know, oh, if you don't do this, you know, this is going to happen. Oh, you know, oh, well, I better do that then, because otherwise, oh. You know, I wanted to just really feel what was right for me. And that's very personal to everybody, you know. And for some people, it's hard to know what they've never been allowed to make their own decisions. And it can be very hard to know what you feel if you've never been allowed to trust yourself. You know, a lot of people are told what to think, what's the appropriate way to behave in a given situation. You know, there's a lot of programming goes into us, how to behave, how to think, how to react. If this happens, that's a bad thing. If this happens, oh, well, then we'll celebrate. And if this happens, we're going to grieve. And it doesn't have to be like that, you know. And luckily for me, I know enough people that know how to be like that with me as well. But I think maybe it's difficult. I don't know what it's like for everybody else. I only know what it's like for me. But I would say, yeah, go into yourself and try and find your truth and act from there. It's the best we can do, eh?
I'd just like to reiterate that, yes, you're a great speaker, and I hope you get the opportunity to tell more people about your amazing, inspiring story. Can you say a little bit about your father and mother and how they managed to bring you up with such an amazing attitude to life?
Well, you know, I wish my mum could be here tonight, actually. You know, they're just incredible people, you know. My mother's such an exceptional woman, and my father was an exceptional man, you know, and I think really it's that thing of just, they never tried to impose what they thought my life should be, you know. So I think I was given, like I said before, given the chance to be myself as much as possible, and also to celebrate, you know. There was a lot of celebration of life, you know, and acceptance of what goes on and allowing things to be what they are, you know. My father's work, that was very much his approach as well, you know, to allow people to have the experience they were having without having to judge it or change it. And so maybe my story follows on a bit from that, quite naturally, as it would, you know. And to have the support of my mother all along this way, you know, that she has managed, although she already lost her eldest son, my brother, the year before, to still manage to support me and to stay steady with that and to not be scared of the journey I was taking, you know, but to stand by me and understand that that was the way I wanted it to be, and that was the way it was. So, yeah, my mother is really, truly exceptional woman. I'm so, so grateful to have her. It's really, yeah. And my father, I feel him all the time. He's omnipresent. Yeah.
Can I say something? I had also the great pleasure of knowing Natascha's mother as well. Natascha, she was very, very scared. She was terrified. but she stayed with it.
With my mum.
Within the fear, she stayed so present for you and so supporting of you. But for me, there's an important message. It's not necessarily about not having fear, because the fear was there. You know, I'm just saying from what I saw of her, the fear was there. And she wept with me a few times, saying, I do not want to lose my daughter. I've just lost my son. But she was able to really just be with herself and to be with you, and that was clearly such a great gift.
Mm.
Simplified, would you say the transformational process was about you going as deeply into your centre, into the depths of yourself as possible, while being open to whatever is without resistance? Are they the two main parts of that transformation, or was there something else?
Yeah, no, yeah, that sounds quite good, and actually, funny enough, enjoying the ride. You know, it's been a beautiful time actually, and it's brought a lot of people. You know, it's a lot of people's story. There's a lot of people involved over these years, and it's a lot of people's story. And transformation has rippled through a lot of people, and changed a lot of quite a few people's lives in this journey. So it can only be seen as quite a blessing, yeah. But yeah, acceptance and yeah, being with it.
Did you ever feel enthusiastic for the journey?
Was I enthusiastic?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Sort of, being completely open to something, you're kind of going to something with enthusiasm.
Well, like I was saying in the beginning, after my brother died, I'd really lost my sense of engagement with life, my will and desire. And when I found I had the cancer, it was like a spark, an ignition of interest again. So it did bring some now this is a challenge I'm interested in. So it grabbed my attention to sort of help my spirit come and engage with the journey, which has been quite fascinating for me, to understand what is life, what is my life, what is, you know, what's at the heart of me. And yeah.
I think in my experience of Natascha, one of the things that I found consistently remarkable about her is her ability to accept what's given, and to not only to accept what's given, but to really take in what's given. I think so many of us spend so much of our lives, you know, pushing things away. And I've seen so little of that in Natascha, and it's been so beautiful. And she's been able to, you know, and you can feel in her words, in her story, you know, she's been able to take in the support, been able to take in the love. It's all very well to say, yes, I've been so lucky. Maybe we're also lucky, but we don't always take it in. We can all, so many of us, we just protect ourselves and push things away. But I think for me, what I've seen in this journey with Natascha and in this extraordinary turnaround is just her incredible ability to take things in, not just intellectually, but really with her being and to receive. And that's been very, very touching, very beautiful to see that.
There's been a lot to learn about receiving, actually. And that has been a massive bit of it, actually, because it's quite something to actually truly receive. There's a lot of humility to receive, and to be in a position where you have to receive, and to be so deeply humbled by that, but also to realise that to receive is to give as well. Giving isn't the only giving. And I always love to be in the position to give, and then to be forced into this position of having to receive, but then finding that's a beautiful place to have to receive. And I've grown to enjoy it a lot. Receiving's pretty good. But yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to learn in allowing yourself to receive. And then it is everywhere, I find it's everywhere, you know. Life is giving all the time. It's giving from everywhere. It's giving from everywhere.
Having been so close to death, does it hold any fear for you now? Will you be quite happy to go there?
Every moment's new, you know. Every moment's new. Moment to moment is new. And things can rise up at any time, you know. But I don't know. You know, it's not there right now, but I don't feel like I'm dying imminently right now. No, you know, there'd be a lot of letting go to do again. You know, as you get to that, it's this constant, like, letting go, letting go of my son. The only thing I don't want to do is let go of my son. The rest of it, I don't mind at all, you know, but it always, like, evolves around being a mother and being there for him. I don't, moment to moment, yeah, so I can only speculate, can't I, from here, because I'm not there. But until that time comes, I don't know. Right now, I don't feel it. I don't feel scared. It's quite something to talk to you all, actually, you know. I hope I've made sense, because it's so higgledy-piggledy, the bits I've picked, and there's so much more. You know, there's 7 years of, well, there's a whole lifetime, but if we start from when, 7 years of a lot of things going down, a lot of people, and yeah, so I've only touched on a few things, but thanks for all being here, hey? Maybe we share something just in our beings and continue to share that life, this mystery of life. Celebrate it.
So maybe before we end, just to sit in that stillness for a few moments and just try and get that sense of what Natascha has so beautifully spoken about, that real sense of self, so that we can leave here with that gift that Natascha has so beautifully shared with us. So anchor it in yourself before you leave here. So let's just spend a couple of minutes finding that.